Happening right now, this moment, President Trump is meeting in the cabinet room with his cabinet secretaries. We're hearing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem share a heart-wrenching story from Texas, where floods have taken the hill country. Let's listen in.
So unified. I think a lot of lives have been saved. That could have been as bad as it was, and you could have lost double or triple. This thing was just really horrible. Well, congratulations on a great job, and appreciate it. I know you're going down. I'll be going down on Friday with First Lady, who will be taking a trip, and we don't want to get in anyone's way because that's what happens. The president goes and everyone's around focused on. I don't want anyone to focus on us, but it's possible they could have somebody saved still. There's a lot of areas. It's a big area. And it's probably unlikely at this point, but there could be. They're thinking there could be the possibility. But what a tragic situation. A good job, and we'll see you on Friday, and we'll finish out the day here. I think you've been reading a lot about. It's a terrible topic when you talk about financial after this, but we have a big country, and we've been doing very well. The tariffs, as you know, are starting to come in at record levels. Tremendous amounts of money are coming in to our country. We never did that before. We're not used to it. We only have tariffs going out. We only adhered to the rules of other nations who charged us tremendous tariffs because we were led by stupid people or people without any business sense. And I'd like to ask Scott, you could maybe talk a little bit about how well we're doing with regard to the money coming in. And the big money will start coming in on August 1st. I think it was made clear today by the letters that were sent out yesterday and today. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. We will have taken in about $100 billion in tariff income thus far this year, and that's with the tariffs, the major tariffs not having started till the second quarter. So we could expect that could be well over $300 billion by the end of the year. We don't agree with CBO scoring, but for those who do, the CBO scored tariff income over the next 10 years at $2.8 trillion, which we think is probably low. And sir, under your leadership, we're witnessing.
And they gave us no credit during this last little, the great, big, beautiful bill. I always use the word great. I add that to it because it really is what it is. It's never been anything like it, actually. And I want to thank all the Republicans that voted for it. And I want to, scold the Democrats because they're voting for tax cuts. They're voting for no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and many, many other things far more important than that. Great health care. And frankly, every Democrat should lose their election because it was purely political to vote. They were told not to vote for it. So think of it. We got 218 to 2. And then with the Senate, we had 50 to 3. Democrats didn't vote at all. Not one positive vote with all of the good things in there. Economic development money, tremendous border money. Now you're loaded up on the border. And I don't think we're going to need so much of it because we had zero come in last month, so I'm not sure how much of it we want to spend. You may think about that. You may actually think about saving a lot of money because the wall's been largely built, and it obviously worked. But you may want to think about that. But so I think it's incredible when I watch the Democrats, and they have standard lines like they had Russia, Russia, Russia. They had the laptop from hell. It all came from Russia. They make things up and they go with it and they feed it to you people in many cases. And they said, "Here's our line," and I hear the new line is death. Oh, it's death. Everyone's going to die. There's nothing to do with death. In fact, we're saving our country. Death is from allowing 25 million people into our country, of which 3 or 4 are stone cold, hard criminals. 11,888 are murderers, many of them committing more than one murder. That's death, and the Democrats did that. Joe Biden did that by allowing people to come in here just totally unchecked, unvetted, open borders, open borders. The whole world was dumped into our country from prisons, from gangs, from mental institutions. We have many people walking the streets, walking in areas that we don't know anything about, that came out of insane asylums. They released their the insane asylum population into our country, and it's amazing the job that you and Tom Homan are doing, by the way, on that. But we have to get them out, and we have no choice. We have to get them out, and we are getting them out. And so, Pete, you want to tell them about our great military and how well we did with respect to the bombers and the B-2? We had the pilots here 2 days ago, and they were incredible people. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Truly a historic mission, and demonstrated the skill and courage of the United States military. From those B-2 pilots and families that we had a chance to meet, sir, to the fighter pilots, to the refuelers, to the maintainers, to the air defenders who defended the base. What was demonstrated on the world stage was American military might and capability. And it wasn't just Fordo and Esfahan and Natanz that took notice in Iran. It was the rest of the world. That we have a decisive commander-in-chief willing to use these capabilities, which are the best in the world. As the president pointed out, no one else could have done what America did there on that night, and everyone took notice of that. With the One Big Beautiful Bill, sir, we've got $150 billion additional to invest in Golden Dome and all the other weapon systems and stockpiles and shipbuilding priorities of yours. Another month, another historic recruiting bump. It's not just the Army and the Marine Corps anymore, it's the Navy, the Air Force, and the Space Force, all historically ahead of where they've ever been. So historic spirit inside the military. We had a chance to be at NATO, Marco and I, and see how the world responds to us saying it's time for you to shoulder the burden and take the lead for your continent. It only happens with President Trump leading. And we're proud to be a part of what's going on at the border, sir. With now a fourth national defense area where we're helping get to that number 0 and securing the border. But that mission, Operation Midnight Hammer, re-established deterrence. It reversed what happened in Afghanistan. You saw the debacle of what Biden allowed to happen in Afghanistan and what that did to our image. President Trump said, with Operation Midnight Hammer, we're re-establishing American leadership and deterrence, and we're proud to be a part of it, sir.
And our so-called enemies were watching. They watched every minute of it. They watched. There was very few people that weren't watching, actually, but they watched every minute. It was a perfect military performance, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, if you compare that to the same country, the hostages from years ago, Jimmy Carter, it was unfortunate for Jimmy Carter. He was a nice man, but with the helicopters going down, the sandstorms, the prisoners, they got captured. Then the election and the prisoners and Reagan and all the problems. It was nothing but problems. And that was a failure. And ours was not only the pilots. I mean, those machines flew for 37 straight hours. They didn't stop. They went skedaddle. You know the word skedaddle? It means skedaddle. They dropped the bombs and somebody said, skedaddle. Let's get the hell out of here. And every bomb hit its mark. And hit it incredibly. And as you know, the Atomic Energy Commission said it's gone. That place is gone. We had a lot of fake reporting, mostly from CNN, where the scammer a writer for CNN, who should be fired, by the way, she was involved with the 51 fake intelligence agents, if you remember that. She did that story, created a story out of it. She created a story out of the laptop from hell, saying it came from Russia, but it actually came from Hunter Biden's bedroom or worse. Just a scammer, and she's still at CNN, which is pretty amazing. But we'll ask you a question about her. But they came up with this concept that maybe the attack wasn't that good. Maybe, and I saw it happen right after the attack. I saw this person on CNN. I like to watch the enemy. You learn from the enemy. And I watch, because you have to know where they're coming from. And I watched her say, Anderson, you know, I'm hearing stories that maybe they didn't hit their target, maybe it wasn't that good a hit. And you know, hearing stories. The next day it was a little more, and the next day a little more. After 3-4 days, she was saying, you know, I don't know, I don't think it was that. Except by that time everybody knew it was hit perfectly. The evidence is in the planes. The evidence the pilots are the best evidence. But they actually came out of their plane, because they were here the other day, and they said, it was so sad. We did such a good job. We flew into very dangerous airspace. I'll never forget, we were in the Situation Room, and they said they have entered Iranian airspace, and everyone took a deep breath because they had more missiles pointed at them, but the equipment is so good, it's stealth, way up in the air, and it was stealth, and they went right through that, and they sort of, by the time they found out they were there, they were already gone. That was the word skedaddle, get the hell out of here. But they were right in the most dangerous airspace in the world, and they took those big, beautiful, very fast. They're unbelievable planes. I mean, they become really beautiful works of art. You know, I always thought they sort of were cool, but now they look better than just cool, don't they, huh? But they dropped the loads, and literally they would hit, if you look at this table, from here to there, they had a half a refrigerator door is the way to best explain it. Take a refrigerator door, average size, cut it in half. That was their target. They hit every single one. Then we had 30 missiles, Tomahawk, shot from submarines 300 miles away. Every one of them hit their target. It was a perfect mission. Then they came back, almost 37 hours. Every plane worked perfectly. The mechanics were here too. I said, you got to get the mechanics here. We didn't have any problems. If you remember, they had a lot of problems with the helicopters, but they did fly through a dust storm, which they shouldn't have done. Sometimes you say, let's go back and try it on a nicer day. Dust and sand don't work well with helicopters if you know much about helicopters, but that was a horrible embarrassment to us. Then we had Afghanistan, which I think was the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, and we would have gotten out. I was the one that got them down. I would have kept Bagram, the big air base, which right now is controlled by China, one among the most powerful runways in the world, thick with concrete and steel. Anything could land, and right now they were 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. I was keeping it. Outside of that, we were leaving, and I would have been out faster than them, but we would have gotten out with strength and dignity. Instead, that was the most botched up mess I've ever seen. They left all that equipment behind, and every year they have a parade running down some third-rate street with the equipment. You know, it's supposed to be Fifth Avenue. It doesn't work. But with all that equipment that they left, they should have taken every ounce of it. I was taking every ounce. I said every screw, every bolt, every nail you take out of there. And Millie said, I remember one time, sir, we're better off leaving the equipment. Why? Well, it's cheaper. I said, cheaper? You mean it's cheaper to leave a $150 million airplane rather than flying into Pakistan or India or someplace, or just flying it straight home? It's cheap. Yes, sir. That's when I knew he was an idiot. Didn't take long to figure that one out. But they left all that equipment, but they left their dignity behind. It was the most embarrassing moment, in my opinion, in the history of our country. Not that we got out. We should have not been there, but that we got out the way we got out, with great embarrassment and death. You had 13 young people. I've gotten to know their families very well, but you had hundreds of people killed that nobody talks about. Yet the other side, many people were killed. Many people are walking around with no legs, no arms from that whole thing. They left from the wrong airport. They should have left from Bagram, because Bagram was a big base with hundreds of miles of fencing and territory around it. Nobody would be able to get near it, and they left. So, we've done a great job, and I think people are really starting to see it. They're starting to appreciate it. Pete's done fantastically. That mission was a work of art. And I have spoken to some of our perceived, I don't know if they're enemies, but they're perceived as being potential enemies. And they essentially said the same thing. Very impressive. There wasn't a thing that we didn't lose an engine. We didn't lose it. Just, they landed and they were cheered. But the sad thing was they were cheered, and one of the pilots said, we were a little concerned because when we got out, we were told that on television they were reporting that we may have missed our targets. Sir, we hit every target. That's what I do for a living. We hit every target. In fact, when the bombs hit, a yellow haze came over the horizon that I've never seen before. It just lit up the whole horizon, brighter than the sun. It was like looking into the sun. He goes, we hit our target, because you know what that was exploding. And but they were a little downbeat because they listened to that fake CNN reporting and the fake New York Times. They worked together to try and say that it wasn't perfect. They couldn't say what they missed. All they could say is, maybe it wasn't perfect. And you ought to fire that reporter immediately. You should fire her. Real fake. And so I just want to congratulate those pilots. And, you know, a lot of people don't like bringing things like that up. I do. I always like confronting, because otherwise the public doesn't know that you're a bunch of crooked people. But they know, they've learned, and the media has to straighten out their act. You know, the media is down to 17% approval. You got to do a little better than that. It's important for the country that you do better. I think they ought to make a lot of changes. I think changes are going to be made to the media, but it's hard to have a really successful country if you have a corrupt media, and we really have a corrupt media. And nobody really knows why. I mean, why would you want to have open borders and criminals pouring into our country? Why would you want to have men playing in women's sports, transgender for everyone? You know, you'll have to figure that out. But some of you don't. I mean, I'm looking at some people, they love the country, but I look at other people and they can't. But we were really proud of our military. It was, and the people that maybe don't like us or want to play games with us, because I think that had you not had the situation in Afghanistan, I don't think Putin would have gone in. I think when Putin looked at how stupid and incompetent that operation was, he said, wow, this might be a chance. And we're dealing with him now too. We're not happy with Putin. I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now, because he's killing a lot of people. And a lot of them are his soldiers and their soldiers, mostly. And it's now up to 7,000 a week. And I'm not happy with Putin. Okay, any questions? Yes.
Yes, sir. You just said that you're not happy with Vladimir Putin. Is there anything that you plan to do to act on that feeling of
Well, I
unhappiness?
wouldn't be telling you. Don't we want to have a little surprise? You know, one of the things we did with the attack is that, and you asked that question, I didn't mean to be rude, but I'm rude because I'm looking at some of these crooked people up here, so I'm rude, but your question was asked very nicely. But one of the things we did is we went over every fact. We wanted to get every fact straight. We wanted to have the distance straight, the number of pilots straight. Everything had to be correct, because this was a very important mission. If we failed on this mission, it was beyond the war that, you know, obviously we had with Iran and Israel, and a lot of hatred, a lot of years and years of hatred, centuries of hatred. People have never seen anything like it. So we wanted to be correct with all our facts. So, you know, what I was doing is just asking, it would be great if the media would be correct with their facts. That's all we ask for. So, go ahead. So finish it up.
Oh, yes. Just sort of turning back to Russia, if there's anything that you would signal about your displeasure with them.
Well, look, I'm very unhappy with them. There's no reason for this. It's turned out to be tougher, but it's only tougher. And I will say the Ukrainians were brave, but we gave them the best equipment ever made. We gave them the anti-tank busters that knocked out tanks. I mean, you just aim them in the direction of the tank and the tank is gone. We gave them missiles, the latest and the greatest. They were able to shoot down a lot of things that would have normally wiped out. You know, probably would have been a very quick war. It would have been a war that lasted 3-4 days, but they had the benefit of unbelievable equipment. And Europe gave them too. We gave them far more because Biden shouldn't have done that. He should have equalized. And we should have given him the same, or we should have given actually less than Europe. It affects Europe much more than us, but we're in there for over $300 billion. Europe's in there for over $100 billion, but still, Europe gave a lot. And I will say this, the Ukrainians, whether you think it's unfair that we gave all that money or not, they were very brave because somebody had to operate that stuff. And a lot of people I know wouldn't be operating it, and they wouldn't have the courage to do it. So they fought very bravely. But we gave them the best equipment in the world. We make the best military equipment by far. There's nobody close. You look at other equipment from other countries, it's not even close. That's why everybody wants to buy our equipment. And that's why we're going to step up these contractors now that make it, and they're brilliant, but they make it too slowly. And we have to step them up, Pete, and let them make it at a much higher rate. Unfortunately, we have to do that. But if you look at our Patriots, if you look at our Tomahawks, if you look at our, well, what we do with tanks is, you wouldn't want to be driving a tank. You would feel nice and secure, but they are javelins, they're called. and I gave them the javelins. Remember they said Trump gave the javelins and Obama gave them sheets, right? They called Obama at that time. Barack Hussein Obama, if you haven't heard, did a terrible job. But that was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Do you want to sanction him? Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill on Russia. Do you want him to move
I'm
that
looking
bill?
at it, yeah, no, I'm looking. The Senate is passing and passed a very, very tough sanctions bill. Yeah, I'm looking at
And
it.
you'd sign that?
It's an optional bill. It's totally at my option. They passed it totally at my option, and to terminate totally at my option. And I'm looking at it very strongly.
Yesterday you said
Can I
Biden
ask you,
war
the
weapons.
Go ahead, please.
the Council of Economic Advisors released a new report saying that imported goods have actually decreased in price from December.
I know, it's not-
through March. Well, my question is,
With the
Fed
tariffs.
Chairman, well, the Fed Chairman keeps saying that tariffs are going to cause price increases.
Are we
the
sure?
prices just not
Chairman
passed
of the
through?
Fed?
Yes, exactly.
Well,
Are the
you
prices-
do a better job than him.
Thank you. Are the prices just not passed through yet?
No, I think what's happening is everything's evening out. You know, when we charge, see what people don't understand, the other countries have been charged, almost every country charges us tariffs. We had deficits with everybody for years, for decades. And we were like this big monolith that made bad deals with everybody. We rebuilt South Korea, we stayed there. It's okay, we rebuilt it and we stayed there. And they pay us very little for the military. I got them to pay billions of dollars, and Biden then canceled it when he came in. I sent to South Korea as an example. We give you free military, essentially, very little. And I think you should pay us $10 billion a year. And they went crazy. But they agreed to 3. So I got 3 with a phone call. And I was satisfied. I said, but next year we have to talk. And then we had a rigged election, and we never got to talk. And you know what Biden did? They probably went to him and they said, listen, Trump treated us terribly, and we shouldn't be paying anything, and he cut it down to nothing. So that's what happens. It's ridiculous. That's the other thing. We're talking to countries about contributing to the military, not only just paying more in NATO, but contributing. We have 45,000 soldiers in South Korea. We have 45,000 soldiers in Germany, 52,000 actually. And that's a huge economic development for them. That's tremendous amount, just like having a city. It's tremendous money for them, and it's a tremendous loss for us. So we're talking, in a very nice way, we're talking to them about it. It's very unfair. We supply the militaries to many very successful countries. I mean, South Korea is making a lot of money, and they're very good. They're very good, but, they should be paying for their own military.
President Trump, can I ask you a question about Jerome Powell as well, and then the question to the Attorney General? Jerome Powell, and then I have a question for the Attorney General. Jerome Powell, who you've been pressuring to lower interest rates, he's facing accusations of lying to Congress, which is a potential crime about the
Well, then he
opulence.
should resign immediately. We should get somebody in there that's going to lower interest rates.
Do you want congressional
Why don't you
Republicans
call for his resignation?
Do you want congressional Republicans to investigate and
It's
pursue
okay
and
with
punish?
me. I think he's terrible. I think, look, we're paying, I call him Too Late. T-O-O, Too Late, like Too Tall Jones for the Dallas Cowboys, right? Too late. He's always late. But he wasn't late with Biden before the election. He was cutting him like crazy. It didn't help too much, did it? But he was cutting him like crazy before the election with Kamala and Biden. He was trying to get them in, I guess. I don't know. He was recommended by somebody that worked for me. I like you better.
If I could ask the Attorney General a question too, President.
Sure.
Your memo and release yesterday with Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for an American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of his death?
Yeah, sure. If I
Could I just interrupt for
Sure.
1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Mr. President, on the tariffs again, August 1st, you said it is the deadline. What incentives do countries have to negotiate? It seems that deadline keeps moving. It was April 2nd, now it's...
We didn't move, no. It's always been August 1st, that's what we're paying. A statement was put out today, and I put it out just to make it clear. It wasn't a change, it was August 1st. We don't change very much. You know, every time we put out a statement, they say he made a change. I didn't make a change. A clarification, maybe. No, August 1st they pay. And everybody pays, everybody has to pay, and the incentive is that they have the right to deal in the United States. If they don't want to, they don't have to pay, and they don't have to deal here. But if they want to buy and make a lot of money and sell in the United States, they have to do that. You know, if you go back and look at some of the good presidents, our country was the wealthiest, proportionately the wealthiest, from 1870 to 1913. It was an all-tariff country. We didn't have income tax. That came in in 1913. We had tariffs, and we had so much money we didn't know what to do with it. We had, we had a couple of presidents that were very, very strong. McKinley, I guess more than anybody, but he was the tariff king, but he was very, very strong. It's sort of sad. He made a fortune for this country, became very rich, and then Teddy Roosevelt went out and vice president, and he spent the money. And they said Roosevelt was a great president. And let's say he was a great president, but the money was paid by McKinley with tariffs. Tariffs are charged by other countries at levels that are ridiculous. And you know, I call those other countries to say, and every one of them is willing to give us everything now, by the way, just so you know. Sir, we'll charge you no tariffs, nothing. We'll give you everything. We'll give you access to our markets. We'll give you everything. Is that a correct statement, Scott?
Yes, sir.
Howard, would you say that's a correct statement?
Exactly correct.
It's like they just don't, because they're very spoiled, because for years they ripped us off and we didn't have a president that understood it, or Secretary of Treasury or Secretary of a lot of different secretaries are involved, but certainly Commerce Secretary was, you know, not doing their job. I don't know about Kelly, she's small business. We'll keep it that way, okay? Her small business is bigger than almost all big businesses when you add it all up. But no, they are very respectful of our country, but the incentive is that they have the right to do business with us. Without that, they don't have the right to do business, and that would be okay too.
And when the
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, we've been watching President Trump taking questions in the cabinet room after several speakers of the members of the cabinet spoke on a range of issues, from the Texas flooding to Operation Midnight Hammer, which President Trump defended, saying that the U.S. had to build back credible threat capability after the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. But probably the biggest news coming out of this is his comments related to the Jeffrey Epstein news that's been breaking over the last couple of days, that DOJ memo suggesting that there was no evidence there that he had indeed blackmailed political officials or that he was perhaps an intelligence asset. Bondi being asked point blank by the New York Post, Stevie Nelson, who's the pooler today, if she knew if he was indeed an intelligence asset. Bondi saying she didn't know, and President Trump jumping in there saying he can't believe that Stevie was asking that question today, but that's a question on everybody's minds, let's be honest. But the president there taking a victory lap in regards to tariffs, saying that tariffs are bringing in big money and they'll bring in even more after August 1st. And that's where we'll take a deeper dive with Spencer Morrison after this commercial break. Stick with us.
Friends, we all know the truth. Big Pharma and the federal bureaucracy have made a mess of healthcare in this country, and boy, that's an understatement. President Trump signed an executive order to bring prices down, and that's a great step. But we know that real change takes time. There's one pharmacy that is already stepping up. I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. They're not waiting. They're taking action now with a summer sale that gives you the power to take control of your health. Right now, through the end of June, you get 20% off site-wide, no insurance required. Did you hear that? 20% off site-wide, no insurance required. They work with licensed doctors in all 50 states, and they ship fast straight to your door. Whether it's ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, methylene blue, antibiotics, emergency kits, or your daily prescriptions, this is a time to stock up. If you believe in medical freedom, if you're tired of waiting for someone else to fix things, do what I do. Take action. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell and use promo code Lindell20, Lindell 20 for 20% off your entire order. That's allfamilypharmacy.com, Lindell. Promo code Lindell20. Let's protect our families, defend our freedom, and make America healthy again together.
Are the tariff letters that you sent today final offers, or are they negotiable?
More or less final offer.
So South Korea, Japan should take it or
We're
leave
always
it?
subject to negotiate something that's fair, but we've talked to most of the countries, and pretty much they've had their way for many, many decades, as you know. And it was time that we just wanted fairness. This is not really equitable from our standpoint because it's just a small token by comparison to the damage that's been done over the years. But we had no other president that was willing to do this. I did it in my first term with China and others. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs. No inflation, the most successful period of time that we've ever had financially in the country. The first term. I think this term is going to be much better, even much better than that. That was the best ever, and this is going to be, I think, substantially better. And we're on the way to doing that. We've already taken in over $100 billion worth of tariffs, and we haven't even started.
It seems like the trade war, which many have said was not really on, is very much back on. Trump issued stern letters this week to the leaders of traditional allies like Japan and South Korea, demanding they renegotiate or face stiff tariffs on their products coming into the United States. According to the Financial Times, a mouthpiece of the neoliberal globalist free trade community, the markets just don't think Trump is serious about his tariff threats. Now, our next guest argues they should be. Previously, Trump threatened 24% tariffs on Japan and South Korea. They're getting 25%. And that just might be the start. Is this sustainable? Will it bring in the kind of revenue that Trump's team seems to think? We're joined by Spencer Morrison. He is the author of the book, Reshore. Tariffs will bring our jobs home and revive the American dream. He's going to help us navigate the latest moves in Trump's trade war. And in fact, that was probably the largest focus of Trump's cabinet meeting we've been sitting and watching at the start of the show. Spencer, Trump is saying that they're already bringing in loads of money and that we'll be bringing in more money on August 1st. He's sticking to the tariffs, right?
I think he's sticking to the tariffs. You have to remember, this president has been, even before he ever got into politics, back in the 1980s when he was on Oprah, he was talking about tariffs and how America was getting ripped off on trade. So I think he's serious about it. The question is whether or not he's going to give more time to negotiate. Everybody knows President Trump loves to negotiate. The tariff deadline has already been extended. I think this is sort of the second extension of it. Some countries have come to the table, though. You got to remember, there's been a deal with the United Kingdom. There's been a deal with Vietnam that was just signed. There's an interim deal with China, which is also coming due in August. So we'll see ultimately what unfolds with these negotiations. One thing I'd like to point out, though, and I think it's really important to remember, none of the deals that have been negotiated so far or that are apparently in the works are free trade agreements. All of them asymmetrically skew the tariffs in America's favor. So I think that's a really great thing that we're seeing coming out of these deals.
I mean, has that ever happened in a trade deal before, Spencer? Or at least it's been a while, right?
Yeah, a lot of these, all the free trade deals usually put, American producers on the back burner and unfortunately prioritize foreign interests. So I think we're finally seeing some movement on that. I mean, this is a big about face. For example, with the Vietnam deal, Vietnam, there's a 0% tariffs on American goods entering Vietnam, 20% tariff on goods coming into America. And the most important part about that deal is that any goods that are shipped through Vietnam, so for example, goods that are coming in maybe from China or Cambodia, they're subject to an additional tariff, an additional 20%. So I think the Trump administration is live not only to the issues of, this asymmetrical trade, but also they're live to the issue that a lot of countries are sort of routing their imports through like shell countries, basically. China famously used to do this through Hong Kong. That's been worked out, but I think it's a good sign that the administration is live to this issue.
His Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, was, of course, present in that cabinet meeting. And he had this to say about the Trump tariffs. Let's listen.
Yes, sir. We will have taken in about $100 billion in tariff income thus far this year, and that's with the tariff, the major tariff not having started till the second quarter. So we could expect that could be well over $300 billion by the end of the year. We don't agree with CBO scoring, but for those who do, the CBO scored tariff income over the next 10 years at $2.8 trillion, which we think is probably low.
Bessent's actually being floated as potentially a replacement for Jerome Powell should he resign. So he's on board with the Trump tariffs, saying that one of the discussions there in the cabinet room was that these tariffs could overcome the deficit. Of course, Bessent saying we don't trust CBO scoring, and we don't, and that they think the revenue is going to be even greater.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'd love to see the tariff revenue go down to, $0. And the reason I say that is because I want to see American industry boom and develop to the point that the country is self-sufficient and no longer needs to import all of these goods, right? So you got to remember, there's 2 points to a tariff, and this goes all the way back to Alexander Hamilton's report on manufacturers. Tariffs have a dual purpose. The first purpose is revenue generation. They're a tax, right? Everybody knows that. That's why the Tariff Act of 1789 was put into effect. It was to raise money for the new colonial government. The second purpose of tariffs, though, and this is a more important, broad purpose, is to protect American industry from asymmetrical foreign competition. This is the American system. This is the system that America prospered under for over 150 years. And ultimately, what I think we'd love to see is to reshore all of those factories from places like China and Mexico, reshore the IT industry from India, and bring those jobs and all of that wealth and capital back to America. So, there's projections of, these high tariff revenues. I'd love to see projections of very low tariff revenues, because that means reshoring is working.
I want to ask you, let's bring BRICS more into the conversation. Does his harder stance on BRICS, so he's threatening any nation that does business with BRICS with an additional 10% of tariffs, does that aid in the effort of reshoring?
Yeah, I think there's, President Trump is also using these as a political tool. People have to understand that the global trade regime has shifted dramatically in the last 20 years as China's come out onto the stage as the world's largest exporter. A lot of countries, in fact, most in the world are now, their primary trading partner is China rather than America. So I think the president is live to that issue. He'd like countries to do business with America more so than China. But I think ultimately what we need to do is rebuild and reindustrialize America. That's the first order of business, because if America is producing high quality, economical goods, people are going to want to buy them no matter what, right? So the focus has to be on reshoring rather than using tariffs to generate tax revenue or as a political tool. The focus has to be on making America rich again.
Every now and then you'll hear the administration touch on the reshoring and the manufacturing issue. Not as much as they talk about the tariffs, though. You're very good at focusing the conversation back to the ultimate goal of tariffs. Do you think that the White House is messaging enough on the ultimate goal, the manufacturing reshoring? Because I would say, in my opinion, we might not hear that enough. And we heard it a lot with Peter Navarro in the first administration, right? He was brought out there a lot to talk specifically about doing that and how we would do that in executive orders. But I don't hear it as much. Wonder why that is.
Yeah, Peter Navarro is amazing. And, he endorsed my book, Reshore, so everybody should get a copy of
That's
Reshore.
Right.
So Peter Navarro is great on that point, and he's excellent at bringing the message home. How does the economy actually affect the ordinary working class American? And I think the message to some degree is sort of being lost in the noise just because there's so much going on. Obviously, we're in the midst right now of what I hope is a monumental global trade shift. But of course, when that happens, everybody is focusing on the newsy parts of it, right? It's the conflict with China, it's the conflict with Canada. There's talk about all the money that's pouring into the government because there's all this talk of the debt and how we're going to pay that off. So I think those are really flashy and sort of, sexy talking points. It's a lot less interesting, perhaps, to talk about what's going to happen, how many jobs we want to create, or, building a new steel foundry. Does that get the same news traction? Probably not, but I think it should, because that's the stuff that's going to make the ordinary people be able to raise a family on a single income. That's what's going to rebuild our schools and our roads, right? So I think the focus needs to be redirected, and I'm doing my best to do this, to put it back on the American people and the American worker, because that's ultimately what all of this is for, right?
You know what? You sound a little bit like Trump there, in a more generous way about the media. You're right. The fact that we don't talk more about this is probably a product of the media that pushes for more of the sensational story, which is the tariffs and the trade war. So I'm glad on this show we can focus it in back to where the ultimate destination is with this strategy, because I do believe this, I know this is the ultimate strategy that they're going for. It's just not maybe. I think it's sexy. I get excited about bringing back reshoring and bringing back American manufacturing. But then again, I am a coal miner's daughter, so, maybe that's why. Spencer Morrison, is so good to see you. If you're interested in it too and you find it sexy, go out and get Spencer's book, Reshore. As he noted, it was endorsed by the great Peter Navarro, who provided a blurb for the book. It's always great to see you, Spencer. Thanks for joining us on a day that President Trump made a lot of news related to tariffs. We appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on the program. God bless.
He also made news about a lot of other items about Texas. We'll dive deeper into many more of the items President Trump discussed with his cabinet this morning after this break.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Huge breaking news. Mike Lindell Media Corporation, which includes Lindell TV, has gone public with the stock trading symbol MLMC.
Kara Castronovo from Lindell TV.
This is Allison Steinberg here with Lindell TV. We are currently on LindellTV.com.
The platform, which has rapidly grown to attract 7.2 million monthly viewers and 150 million annual impressions. Vocalist's subsidiary social media network supports over 70,000 accounts, and MLMC is poised for even greater success.
This is going to be big, everybody, and I'm really looking forward to it.
There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
Well, after Trump confirmed in his July 3rd rally that Attorney General the Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, was the genius behind the push to exempt illegals working as farmhands from deportation. Looks like the real big ags, corporate ags, biggest ally is doing an about face to save face. But is it for real? Secretary Rollins said no amnesty in her remarks today as she addressed her national security farm plan. But in the background, it sounds like she's still very much pushing for an exemption for illegals to work on farms. So we will see how long this iteration sticks. Rollins is not a favorite amongst U.S. independent farmers I speak with. In the first Trump administration, Rollins also, I can tell you, fell into the category of what we labeled in the media as pro-amnesty Trump officials that supported a plan back in the summer of 2020 to introduce amnesty legislation ahead of the 2020 election. Now, in another story that didn't receive perhaps the attention it deserves, in full Marxist fashion, 11 far-left extremists were just charged in a major terror plot to kill ICE agents in Texas. According to authorities, they were caught with not only tactical gear, but also high-capacity magazines. They also had literature that was entitled Organizing for an Attack, and they had a full plan to execute federal agents. But let's be honest, probably half of them were FBI agents based on historical precedents like J6, the J6 Fedsurrection, and the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping hoax. And in more bizarre news, according to the Washington Post, an imposter using artificial intelligence posed as the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and contacted 3 foreign ministers, a U.S. governor, and a member of Congress. That's according to a State Department cable obtained by WAPO. The imposter contacted these people by sending them voice and text messages that mimicked Rubio's voice and writing style, used artificial intelligence-powered software, and according to a U.S. official and State Department cable that they did obtain, they didn't know who is behind the string of impersonation attempts, but they believe the culprit was probably attempting to manipulate powerful government officials with the goal of accessing or gaining information, important information or accounts, according to that cable. Now, as I've been noting, we've been standing by, we've been watching President Trump's cabinet meeting. We could dip back into that if it's still going on. Let's take a listen. It looks like actually Secretary Rollins is speaking right now. Let's see if she clarifies on the illegal issue.
Talking about, sir, your vision. So I think it was a great day. It was just the start. There's an executive order coming and some other things coming behind that. But protecting America's farms isn't just about protecting our farmers. It's also about national security. So that's what we discussed this morning.
I do want to say that I think we have had a really good relationship with China lately, and we're getting along with them very well. They've been very fair on our trade deal, honestly. And I hope we're going to have a great relationship. It's a big, strong, powerful country. We're more powerful than they are. We have much better military equipment than they do. But we are getting along with them very well. I'm getting along with President Xi very well. We speak often. And with all of that being said, and I understand what you're saying, but I think we're getting along with China very well.
Mr. President, you have sent more weapons to Ukraine, as you said last night. Last week, the Pentagon paused some shipments of weapons to Ukraine. Did you approve of that pause?
We want to put defensive weapons because Putin is not treating human beings right. He's killing too many people. So we're sending some defensive weapons to Ukraine, and I've approved that.
So who ordered the pause last week?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
I think that's a question for the
Go ahead.
Mr.
Yeah.
President, on immigration, the Secretary of Agriculture did say this morning that undocumented workers would not be covered by any amnesty who are working on farms. You had said maybe that the ISA folks won't go after those folks on farms. So which is it?
There's no amnesty. What we're doing is we're getting rid of criminals, but we are doing a work program. Do you want to explain that, please?
Yeah, this morning we talked about, of course, this was a top of mind question. This morning we talked about protecting the farmers and the farmland, but obviously this president's vision of no amnesty, mass deportation continues, but in a strategic way, and then ensuring that our farmers have the labor that they need. Secretary Chavez-DeRimmer has been a leader on this. Obviously this comes out of the Labor Department, but moving toward automation, ensuring that our farmers have that workforce, and moving toward an American workforce. So all of the above.
We've got to give the farmers the people they need, but we're not talking amnesty. Laura, do you want to say something about that?
Thank you, Mr. President. On this, thank you, Secretary Rollins, how important this is never to displace the American worker. What the Department of Labor is doing is focusing on what the law entails now, being more modernized, more streamlining, to work through the H programs. We're going to have a concierge approach to that, where we have developed a new office to answer the need of our farmers and ranchers and producers, and not to displace the American worker, and follow within the law now. And that does not include an amnesty program at all. And we've seen that working, and we'll continue to have that roll out. On the other topics that we've somewhat talked about, the jobs numbers, Mr. President, 4 months in a row we've seen those jobs numbers increase. That's an exciting time for our manufacturers. That was asked earlier. We know it's going to take some time, but through that deregulation process that Lee and I are working on as well, the Department of Labor has rolled out 63 new deregulations that we're going to be moving through. In the first Trump administration, it was successful with over 30. We've just rolled out 63 new ones in order to double down on those manufacturing companies, to let them know that we have signaled through this process that we will assist them in getting the workforce that they need. It's an exciting time. That one big beautiful bill, that was the signal to my former colleagues in Congress to get this done. It's been an important time. I spent time on the ground visiting 7 states in 9 days prior to that bill being passed, because it was the most pro-worker piece of legislation that we will ever see really in this country right now. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. That matters to the American worker, because we don't want to take their money and give it back. We want them to keep more of their hard-earned dollars in their pockets currently, and that's what they're excited about. And as I move forward with these tariff talks, I heard a company, orthopedic company in Indiana, say to me, for the first time since you have taken office, Mr. President,
okay, so we did get somewhat of a clarification from Brooke Rollins on the illegal farm worker amnesty. She said they're not doing that. They're still working with companies and farmers to try to provide them with the help they need. We'll see how this progresses and talk about that a little bit later. Also earlier in the cabinet meeting, President Trump did announce that he would be headed to Texas Friday to visit. As we reported yesterday, the flooding down there has been absolutely catastrophic. Many are dead and missing, even more are displaced and in need of help. Blessedly, the American people are rallying to come to the aid of our friends in Texas. Not only has the National Guard deployed, as you heard President Trump talk about, to rescue victims and provide aid and comfort, but citizen aid groups are also rushing into the scene. It's a hodgepodge of help at lightning speed going in to help the area. And joining us next is Vince Sabin. He's the logistics coordinator for the Buck Up Relief Mission. This is a movement that's using privately owned trucks to ferry disaster relief to the stricken people of Texas, sometimes risking their own lives to do it. Buck Up is part of the Banners for Freedom nonprofit group that provides aid to Americans in need wherever natural disasters may strike. Thanks so much. We got about 5 minutes. You've actually pulled off to the side of the road because you're actively providing help right now. Tell us about your mission and how you all are assisting in Texas and what you're seeing, Vince. Thank you so much for your work.
Relief Mission, we are now coordinating with people, boots on the ground in the area, to bring in supplies as soon as we can. We also are working to support the search and rescue crews as much as possible. So it's just a lot of logistics.
Yeah, as you can see, Vince is literally actually still in the truck moving these supplies. Yeah, let's actually take a listen to what President Trump had to say about his visit to Texas on Friday, and we'll see if we can get Vince with a better connection because we want to hear what he's doing. But this is what President said about what he hopes for his trip to Texas on Friday, that he doesn't want to take attention away from what's going on, but he feels the need to go there. Let's take a listen.
I'll be going down on Friday with First Lady. We'll be taking a trip, and we don't want to get in anyone's way because that's what happens. The president goes and everyone's around focused on. I don't want anyone to focus on us, but it's possible they could have somebody saved still. There's a lot of areas. It's a big area, and it's probably unlikely at this point, but there could be. I mean, they're thinking there could be the possibility, but what a tragic situation. A good job, and we'll see you on Friday.
All right, so President there saying that he and the First Lady will see everyone on Friday. If you'll recall, he did take a trip to Western North Carolina as a candidate and to visit the damage there. And it was I can tell you because, I know a lot of people in Western North Carolina. I used to live there, have family and friends there. That was actually a very important moment for them. It gave them some feeling that people cared. And that's obviously what President Trump wants to do with his trip on Friday. We will, of course, cover that in depth. Unfortunately, we lost Vince with Buckle Up Relief Mission. We'll try to get him back tomorrow to tell you more about what his group is doing on the ground. You heard Secretary Kristi Noem sharing just absolutely horrific stories of what's going on in Texas. Our prayers and thoughts go with all the people in Texas. We'll continue to pray for them. We'll continue to cover their stories and make sure that they receive the adequate assistance that they need to get through this recovery effort. In the meantime, we can bring you this news because of the good folks at MyPillow, MyPillow.com. That's how you get to see and hear the perspectives, the stories that you're not seeing on corporate media. You heard President Trump talk about that in the cabinet room. He recently said he loves Lindell TV. And we're able to do that because of MyPillow.com. So please go to MyPillow.com, use your promo code TRUTH, or call the number you see at the bottom of your screen and get some great products while supporting the absolute truth. I'll see you back at 2:30. Christy Lee is next with DC Dispatch. Don't miss it.